We all want to live in a community that has good access to affordable, sustainable, and reliable transportation. But across the US, we have separate and unequal transit systems. The trains run faster and better, and bus services come when they come in some places. We might ask ourselves, who is in control of the transit system? How does our transit system get paid for, and how do we influence the process? Here's a quick breakdown. Who is in control of the transit system? Across the US, transit systems are independently ran transit agencies and/or state, regional, and local entities. Transit agencies have different oversight, local, regional, and even the federal government. The local board, for example, decides the process for how the transit routes are set, where they are located, how money gets spent, and the process for community involvement. It's good to understand the frequency of those meetings and what gets prioritized. How does that transit system get paid for? Now let's get to the money. We pay for transit service through taxes at the local and federal level. There are two major kinds of money. First, capital, which pays for costs like new construction for service lines or buying trains or EV buses. The second, operations, which covers things like paying the driver. The sources of money are different for both. When you ride the train or take the bus, the fares cover some operating costs, but not all. The federal government pays for most of the capital costs, but not operating, and so funds for operations are usually very tight. Transit is also funded through local sources like sales taxes and ballot measures. The federal dollars that flow into our communities follows this process. First, Congress passes the bills, then the president signs it into law. It then goes to the Department of Transportation to make the rules and guidelines for funding. At the Department of Transportation, it gets split within the various agencies like the Federal Transit Administration or Federal Highways Administration. It then goes to the eligible entities who determine how the money is spent. For example, some cities and states get the funds directly from the federal government to operate transit and transportation, like in New Jersey, where the state runs the transit system. And in other places like Los Angeles and Atlanta, the federal government writes a check to the large transit agencies directly. How can we get funding to build projects close to the transit system? There are two major types of federal funding: formula funding based on a community's size or need, and discretionary funding based on competitive grant dollars. With discretionary funding, eligible entities like transit agencies can apply for funding through a competitive process based on the criteria set by the federal and/or state government. Programs like the Capital Investment Grant programs help to fund new projects. For transportation formula dollars, money is allocated to transit agencies or eligible entities like regional metropolitan planning organizations, or your MPO, to support existing and sometimes new projects. It is critical for community-based organizations to play an active role in the process. All approved projects require some portion of public input along the planning and project development process. At times, entities will partner with community-based groups to advance the local project, or community-based organizations approach eligible entities about projects in our communities. The process and flow of funds may be complicated, yet it's important for our voices to be heard to ensure community-centered and equitable implementation of transportation dollars that can really support communities, especially centering low-income, rural, disabled, and Black and Indigenous people of color communities. If we want our community to have better access to transit, we must advocate for a just and equitable transit system. The process and flow of funds may be complicated, yet it's important for our voices to be heard to ensure community-centered and equitable implementation of transportation dollars that can really support communities, especially centering low-income, rural, disabled, and Black and Indigenous people of color communities. If we want our community to have better access to transit, we must advocate for a just and equitable transit system.